to the recap. We are in week 2 of our Problem of God series. Really enjoying this series so far. Last week we talked about the problem of science and faith and how do we reconcile those two things. So if you missed that, you can check out our week 1 recap of the Problem of God. This week we're going to dive into the existence of God. And we're going to talk about what evidence do we have that a God exists. And at the end of the day, that's what we all want for things in life. We all want evidence that things that people claim are true. And so when we talk about the idea that there is a God, what evidence do we have of that? What kind of proof can we present for us to actually take steps in believing in that? So I'm going to give you kind of three big evidences that there is a God. And obviously, this isn't exhaustive. I can't be because this is meant to be short. So if you have further questions or want to have further discussions, like please feel free to message me or on YouTube, or you can find me or come to church or anything like that. But I would love to have this conversation further with anybody that wants to. So let's just dive into it. There's kind of a lot of ground to cover in just a short video. So the first big evidence of the idea that there is a God, that a God exists, is human morality. And this has been a big problem for atheists for a long time as far as arguments are concerned, because it's pretty apparent that there seems to exist this unwritten moral code by which most humans live their life, and it transcends time and culture. So it's not really dependent upon where you grew up. It doesn't matter what time period you live in. There are just some generally accepted moral principles that most humans seem to live by, right? Like, for example, for most people, now there's always exceptions to the rule, and there's people that go against their morals, and they have to deal with that in their own way. But for most people, in most time periods, in most cultures, murder is something that you just don't do. Like, we as a human population generally agree that murder is something that we should not just go around and do. Or stealing, something that's a little less serious. No matter what country you're in, and this has been true since before phones and internet and all that stuff, that you don't just go and take somebody else's stuff. That is wrong. We all know that is wrong. No matter where you're at, skipping somebody in line is viewed as wrong. Like, we all know that is an unjust, unfair thing to do, and it doesn't have to be written down somewhere for you to know that. It just seems to be that humans have a general sense of morality that we all appeal to. And again, there's arguments that can be made for and against this. To me, the ones that are made against it aren't very good, and we could get into that further in some other format. But at the end of the day, I think if we all search our hearts, if we all search ourselves and think about what's true, if you're in a situation somewhere, you would appeal to that base sense of morality, of right and wrong. We don't want to be taken advantage of. We don't want to be harmed. And we all know that deep down inside. We don't want our loved ones to be harmed, right? There is this general sense of moral law that seems to transcend any sort of cultural or evolutionary process. And in order for us to have this high level of moral standard and calling, there must be a moral law giver. And so that's evidence number one. Evidence number two that I want to talk about today is metaphysical realities. Things like love and purpose and fulfillment, hope. Like, those are all things that humans across the globe strive for, right? Like, we often work our whole lives to feel fulfilled, to feel like we have purpose, to feel loved. Like, that is what gets us going in the morning. Beyond money, beyond success, like, there are greater things that humans across the globe, and again across time and culture, have strived for. And these are all things that we know exist, that we all want, and yet they're all things that are not provable through the scientific method. It's not something that you can see on a scan. There's no thing that we can show you that proves purpose or proves love. Those aren't things that are provable through observable and repeatable experiments. Like, we can't touch them, we can't see them, none of that. But we know that they're real. And so, if there are things that are so important to us that we cannot see, that we can't touch or prove by the scientific method, but that we all spend our whole lives trying to achieve, then maybe, just maybe, there is something that we cannot see or prove through the scientific method that put those desires within us. So, those metaphysical realities, those things that we want that science can't prove, to me is another example of there being an existence of a God. And last but not least, to me, there is just so much evidence when you talk about just the existence of the universe itself that shows that there has to be a creator, right? There are some things that we know through science and through research and stuff like that. Like, for example, one, the Big Bang is all but a certainty that it happened. We have been able to observe the universe, and we can see planets and stars moving away from each other. The space in the universe is expanding. Planets are moving away from each other, and through math, we've been able to sort of reverse engineer that, and we know that about 15 billion years ago, the universe came into existence. We know that there was a point in which time, space, matter, energy all came into existence at this one moment, and we call that the Big Bang. But here's another thing that we also know, that if something begins, it must have a cause. I mean, basic logic and science tells you that you cannot get something from nothing. And so, if all matter and stuff began at the Big Bang, then something that exists outside of that, that isn't material, a mind, a spirit, must have caused it to begin. It's logical. To me, it's the most logical. Then, on top of that, there's just the sheer improbability that our universe exists the way that it does to support life. The odds are incredible. The odds of our universe existing the way it does is one chance in 10 to the 138th power. I challenge you to write down that number of zeros and think about those odds. One chance in 10 to the 138th power. The odds are insurmountable, basically impossible that our universe would exist the way that it does. To try and put that number in perspective, about 15 billion years is our best estimate as far as when the universe came into existence. Let's say we take that 15 billion years and we break it down into seconds. That number would be 10 to the 17th power. That's how long about how long our universe has existed. A fraction of the odds that it would exist. Our best estimate as to the number of atoms in the universe is about 10 to the 70th power, about half of the odds that our universe would exist. When you look at all the things, the existence of the universe, the improbability of it, the fact that it needs a cause, human morality that seems to stand the test of culture and time, metaphysical realities that we all strive for, that we all seem to want. And to me, when you look at all of this evidence, and again, this is just pieces of it, but when you look at all this stuff together, it just screams for a creator, for intelligent design, for there to be something greater than existence itself. So this series is all about evidence. So I challenge you to look for the evidence and for the facts, not for the conjecture, not for the speculation, but for the facts. Look at the actual evidence and see for yourself. I think it's overwhelming. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence that shows, that screams, that calls for a creator, an organizer, intelligent design. I challenge you to look at it yourself. That's what this is all about. Know what you believe and why you believe it. Well, thank you guys for tuning in another week. Next week, we will talk about how do we know we can trust the Bible. So we'll talk about some more evidence-based stuff next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good week.